Hey y'all, and welcome back to the Wannabe Author, the podcast that pulls back the curtain on the publishing world, traditional, self-publishing, and more. I'm your host, Taryn Christine, an author navigating the turns and plot twists of getting books into readers' hands. Here we get real about the wins, the rejections, and the lessons learned along the way. Whether you're chasing an agent, going self-published, or just curious how it all works, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hey y'all, and welcome back to the Wannabe Author. I'm your host, Taryn Christine, and today's episode is very new. We haven't done something like this before yet. It is a guest episode, but it's a collaboration guest episode. I feel very honored to introduce this author, editor, as a new podcaster. Their podcast called The Architecture of Story is coming out, and we get to be the first ones to hear from this author about what her podcast has to offer. And let me tell you, I am just obsessed with this author. We've actually had her on the podcast before. And since I had the privilege of interviewing her, at the time it was in season 1, and we were talking about her second book that was coming out. From that time, I've had the chance to get to know her really well. She is actually now my editor of the books I've been indie publishing, and I've never met somebody, an author, so well versed with story and the structure of it and the formula. And we get to talk about that today in this episode. We really dive deep into the architecture of story. And we do that by actually breaking down one of my very own books and using it as kind of a guideline. So if you read my first book, you will be able to follow along really well. If you haven't, this will be very spoilery. So you've been warned. This episode is just so informative, packed with so much regarding story and how it works, and it is a great prequel and example of what you can look forward to when learning from this author in her upcoming podcast. It is my honor and privilege to introduce you all to my friend and editor, Meg Rosenthal. Hey. Hi, Meg. Welcome to the Wannabe Author.
Hi, I'm so happy to be back. Thank you so much for literally saying yes to something you had no reason to, but I appreciate you, and I'm so excited for this little collaborative episode.
Of course. This is such a fun new experience, not only for me here on the Wannabe Author, but seeing you build this platform and having connected with you so much over, how long has it been? Like 6 months that we've known each other and kind of gotten to
It
know
feels
each
like
other
so
more
much
since your
longer
episode?
than that.
It does. It really does. So this is super fun. A whole new chapter, but I'm going to kind of let you introduce this platform that you're building, and we will take it from there.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you, Wannabe Author listeners, to listening to something that is kind of in the vein of the Wannabe Author, but we're going to do a little bit of spin-off, mostly because I know things about stories, but I don't know anything about podcasts. So when I approached Taryn about, I've got this idea for this platform because I see a need and a niche and a place to really try to give back to all the aspiring authors out there and just give them a little bit of information on story structure. I approached Tara and I'm like, I don't know how to reach anyone. I don't know how to do that. So she graciously invited me back on the podcast to chat and kind of give us a little bit of springboard for, drumroll please, the architecture of story. So the architecture of story is kind of a passion project that I have recently dived into full speed ahead. I am a contemporary romance author. I've got 2 books published, but I have really enjoyed a new slight direction or moving around the sphere of writing the 3rd book. In other words, I totally diverted, and now I'm editing books as well. I've recently launched a new editing services business, and I'm really excited about that. But as I was starting to meet with a couple of potential new clients, the recurring theme that kind of kept coming back when I would ask them in our first kind of one-on-one chat, tell me what your book is about. Tell me what you think you did really well in your book, which is actually a terrifying question to answer for authors. Nobody likes to think that they did anything well, which is false. I'm sure there is lots good in that first draft or second draft, however many drafts it took for you to get to me. But the big one then is, what do you want me to be reading for specifically? And I can do the beta reading, the developmental edits, and then the line by line grammar edits as well. But the big feedback that I kept getting was, I want to make sure my story makes sense. I want to make sure my story flows. And so I think one of, if you're a writer and you feel that calling in life, born to like tell a story, it's so intimidating at first glance because you're like, how do I get there? Like, there's, you may think there's not a necessary map out there to follow to actually put your novel down on pages, or if there is a map that you know of out there, you don't necessarily want to follow it, or there might be a fear of following it because you don't want to, copy another book or, infringe on another person's, idea. But I got thinking that there are so many different models out there for novel writing, that I really wanted to pull together to share with you guys because yes, I'm gonna use an F word. Are you ready?
Do it.
Yeah, formula. There is a formula for writing a manuscript in a novel, and it's not something to be fearful of because we are, I would say, pre-programmed, especially now in our social media era, to consume stories in a certain pattern. But it even goes back as far as like way back in the day before written words were shared in books, just telling stories amongst each other and passing stories down through generations. There is a specific model that I wanted to talk about today in our very first Architecture of Story / Wannabe Author collaborative episode, and that is the hero's journey. So this is the first model that that was a lot of firsts, first learned about. I was a creative writing major in college, and unfortunately, in college for when I was studying, a lot of what we were learning was short form fiction, which is understandable. Like, you only have a semester at a time, and you're starting, freshman year, sophomore year, moving on up the ranks. You got to start with the basic building blocks. So we learned a lot about prose writing, which moved into short form fiction and short stories. It wasn't until my junior year of college that I took a seminar in creative writing class. And if you're watching along online instead of listening on the pod, but if you see the video, I still have my notes from college here that I keep and I reference them. Yes, no, it makes me so happy. Because
I love that.
Thanks. But this was the first class and first experience that I had with giving me that roadmap to chart out a full novel. So if you don't know what the hero's journey is, it is based on a book by Joseph Campbell. He wrote a novel called A Hero with a Thousand Faces, and it is all about this idea that there exists a monomyth, like one version of the story that works as a pattern to tell the experience of one hero going on a circular journey. The chart that you can use to reference about, how to plot out that hero's journey is a little bit of a circle, because you start in the hero's normal world, and then they move into their special world where they go on a transformative journey. All basically what the meat and potatoes is about your book, it happens in their special world as they're learning. So think, the classic example I always go to is Harry Potter. He starts, not thinking that he's anything special, just a normal kid living a not so fun life, and then he goes on this wild journey of realizing he's a wizard, circles back, and at the end of the journey comes home again, and then we repeat that for 7 more books. But that's a really good classic example that exists, in our modern age. But those types of myths and stories from Greek mythology and stories that were passed down, that's that pattern that is out there. So if you're starting, your own journey of wanting to write your own book, this was the first model that really stuck with me, and it made it feel tangible and less of an abstract concept of, I want to write a book, but I don't know how. Well, here are certain steps that are tried and true that work. And again, that fear that, you want to be different, you want to be unique. We as readers too, writers and readers, and people that consume media, like we 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 know what works. We know what's out there. And I feel like we're drawn to certain stories. And sure, like once you know the model, then you can shift and break it in certain areas. But I wouldn't recommend, especially for your first novel, straying too far from what works. I would absolutely recommend trying to put your own twist on it, like the things that happen within, these certain steps. Yeah, make it fresh, make it original, make it unique. But your character still has to go on those certain steps because to make a successful story, they have to move through the story, but they have to be transformed inside too. And without your A story and B story working together like that, your external plot points that are happening and then the internal transformation, it's going to fall a little flat. So that is a very long-winded answer to when people ask me, I want my story to flow. Is your journey complete? Essentially. And so this episode, I wanted to really just chat about the steps of what the hero's journey is. And there's a lot of resources out there. We can link some videos below. The first video that I found that does a really good job of taking you through those steps and applying it to modern day stories, so you can see how it works. But I wanted to chat with our wannabe author host today because Taryn, did you how familiar were you with the hero's journey when I first bombarded you and said, let's do an episode on this?
I actually don't think I was super familiar with the hero's journey in the words of Joseph Campbell, like in those videos, because you've sent me all the videos and I've watched them, and wow, they're mind-blowing. It's like things I knew, but hadn't had them like laid out for me like that.
Yeah.
When you're so innately connected with stories and writing stories, it's like but you didn't know. Kind of thing.
No, exactly. And that's like the point of today is it shouldn't be that scary of I gotta plan a book, even if you are, a pantser and, you're gonna write without a plan. The only reason that philosophy somewhat works, you're gonna have to revise and continue if that's your route. I applaud people that can go that route and just spew creativity. But the only reason that kind of works is because you have this narrative structure in the back of your head already, like you said. So.
Yep. And I think the only thing I knew about story, when I was like looking into writing and stuff, was I remembered in elementary school. I don't know if you know this graph, but it's like the graph where it's like intro, this climax at the tippy top, and then just kind of.
Yes. So yeah, intro, rising action, climax, falling action, resolution.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I only thought of it as like the physical plot. I think the character plot, because I feel like there's always two plots with the hero's journey, is like the outside plot and the internal plot.
Yes.
Is kind of how he plays it. Is like what's going on in the inside, like you said, and then the outside. And I think I always innately thought of the internal plot because I think I'm more of a character-driven individual.
Right.
But I didn't have it like really laid out for me until I read a book, actually. Have you heard of Lisa Crone, the story genius?
I think so, actually. I've never read it.
We'll add it to the stuff, but this one
looks familiar. I've seen it on the TikTok.
Okay. Yeah. Probably on one of mine. I talk about it a lot. But it's like Story Genius, how to use brain science to go beyond outlining and write a riveting novel. But it talks a lot about that internal plot.
Okay.
But
yeah, cool.
The stuff you sent me definitely laid it out more simply, if that makes sense.
I love that. So if you didn't quite know exactly what the hero's journey was, we're going to do a little Q&A, essentially. I'm going to switch this back on you. I'm going to talk about, don't be scared. I'm going to talk about each step of the hero's journey, just a kind of a brief summary. Again, like the point of this video is to just use this as a model. Like there's tons of resources out there that go way more in depth about what each of these steps are. But I wanted to use this to prove that even without being super familiar with this specific structure, this idea of the monomyth, these steps existing within story is kind of ingrained in the back of our heads. And if you don't mind, I would like to use your debut novel, Dear Future Husband,
Let's
to kind
do
of
it.
prove this. Okay, so this is everyone's official spoiler warning. We are going to be
Yeah.
spoiling some plot points of Dear Future Husband. So if you haven't read it and you want to read it, it was nice chatting. Go watch the videos that were going to be linked below. Look up the hero's journey. It changed my life. I hope it helps you. But if you've read the book and you're curious about how this actually ended up working out with Tara not even knowing that she was following this model, let's keep going.
Yay!
Okay, all right. So we have three major acts of the hero's journey, which is, again, if you're loosely familiar with story structure, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, three-act story structure is another term that exists that we'll probably do another video of, going more in depth about, each act. Act 1 for the hero's journey is referred to as the departure. Okay, so again, you're starting within our hero's special world, and they've got to go through certain steps before they can cross into. I said that wrong. You're starting within the hero's normal world, ordinary world, before they can become special. So our first plot point that our novels following the hero's journey would follow is called The Call to Adventure. And this is a short burst of the hero's daily life, their normal life. This is a good, it can also be referred to as the opening image. I want to see your character, what a normal day looks for them right before their journey that this book is going to follow would start. So, Taryn, can you find a point in Dear Future Husband where you would start, or just, where did Mabel Mason's story start and fit this model?
Yes. So I'll give like a little spiel, little tiny spiel for those who aren't going to read the book and are wanting to understand kind of where
Oh
we're
yeah, that's
going with this.
probably
But
important.
no,
What's the
you're
book
good.
about first? We should pitch your book.
No,
We skipped some steps.
I
I
just
got
was like,
excited.
no, I love it. I love it. So my book, which it's like behind me right there. It's a upper YA college romance. It's a dual POV, so there are two main characters that we're working with. But it's about a girl who, Mabel Mason, our main character, she spends years writing in a journal, coping with a traumatic past by writing in a journal dedicated to the man she'll one day marry. And her brother's best friend, Trey Turner, who finds the journal and falls for her through her words. But then tragedy strikes. She loses her memories, and he has to sit there and work to either for her to remember that she once cared for him, or to see him worthy worthy of the journal. So,
Also, 10 out of 10.
La-
Y'all should read it if you haven't read it yet.
oh,
Even if
thank
you're listening and it's spoiled, it's still a great book.
Thank you. You're so kind. So, with the call to adventure, I had to kind of make it equal for them both, I felt like, even though it was like very subconscious.
Well, because you're also, it's also told in dual perspective, too.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah,
I didn't even
dual
make
POV.
notes. Yeah, I didn't even make notes on that for what we're going to talk about today. But it is kind of interesting when you start to expand the lens a little bit, and you've got, like, I would still argue that Dear Future Husband is Mabel's journey, but because he gets a POV, like he does probably go on like a separate side quest of his own internal transformation as well.
Yeah, just a tiny bit. I didn't focus too much on his, I think, because Mabel is like the main character.
Yeah.
But I felt like he went through a tiny bit regarding her, if that makes sense.
Correct.
Which we will probably dive into as we keep going. But
yay.
So, like, for years, they are both kind of just doing their thing. He's very much just like all about her brother, they're best friends, and she is in her loner world. In the very first chapter, we get a scene where she is tripping out of a vehicle and he catches her. And it's kind of this altering moment where it's not like super transforming for her right away, but it does trigger these like thoughts and feelings and stuff. But for him, it was like, oh my god, she likes me too.
So fate just had it that she just fell into my arms, and this is what the whole world wants. Yes, I love that. And I like the word you just used. You said trigger, and I think that's a really good, mental image too. Because can have a negative connotation, but not for this moment. Like their your opening image is, yes, them in their normal life, but the story has to have a kickstart. So like some
Yes.
event has to, start this spiral of, hey, you're going to transform, you're going to go on a journey, something new is going to happen. So yes, anyway, that was good line.
No, exactly. Like, even though it's not very noticeable for her, it's like super small, but it does
Mm-hmm.
trigger this chain of events. For him, it was bigger. So that would be, I think, the call to the departure is when she falls into his arms.
Perfect. Love that. So the next step on the hero's journey is the refusal of the call. And this can, I guess, sometimes be an optional stage, but I do think it is very important to, and it doesn't have to be chapters and chapters. It doesn't even have to be a full chapter. It can literally just be a moment, but by your hero acknowledging, hey, some trigger, something just changed. I have the choice to change with it or resist this change. By having them consciously refuse the call to adventure for just a moment, it shows the reader that they are reluctant to this change, therefore work needs done on their B story, their internal story. So this beat can be really small, it could be big, but I do think it is important to at least acknowledge it once, for the reader's sake, to know that, okay, this hero that I'm, about to get invested in, there is work that needs done with them. They're not perfect. There is something that's going to change about them if they go on this little adventure. So, what happened in Dear Future
Yes.
Husband? Did Maybelle happen to refuse her call to into Trey's arms?
Yes, she did. I think it. There's quite a bunch of refusal. Like, it was so. Like, the thing with Dear Future Husband is it isn't just a romance. There's a lot of underlining things, and so there was quite a few things I feel like she had to refuse, and not just the call to his arms, but that she could let herself fall in love or even make friends and stuff. So we see her kind of refuse the call quite a bit, I feel like, and then for Trey, he gets nervous, but it's an easier decision for him to go on to what is it? Do it. I don't know.
to to go on his adventure, go on his journey
Yeah,
to
I got a foggy brain real bad right there.
all good. We're learning new things. Okay, cool. So again, you didn't know that was a step, and you already put it into your book. I'm going to say that a lot because we're going to go through this whole book, and you're going to realize you followed pretty much every step to it. Because I've read this book and I love this book, and I thought this book was going to be a good example because, again, hero's journey, special, ordinary world, special world, magic, adventures. There's going to be a lot of terms that we're going to come up with that seem very epic and high fantasy and mythologically rooted. Your book is a contemporary coming of age romance story that you just said was very character driven, not necessarily plot driven, but it is so interesting that it still hits all of these certain points too. So anyway, moving on. Speaking of magic, the next step is called supernatural aid. You don't have magic in your book, like we just said, but the supernatural aid, again, should be an important step because for your hero to go on this quest, journey, internal transformation, it's scary. And again, we had this trigger that kind of pushed them to the edge, but there's a reason they haven't done this journey yet. There's a reason they haven't, changed themselves up until the start of the book that you are writing, because it is hard and they may need help along the way. So that's where the supernatural aid comes in play. In again, mythology terms, it might have been, in Harry Potter's terms, a magic wand or some sort of relic that had power. But in a contemporary romance setting, it can be, from a mentor or a teacher and some bit of advice that they're going to carry through. It can be metaphorical. So did Maybelle have any sort of supernatural aid that helped her go on this journey of learning to let love in and experience Trey?
I think I think there's a lot of mentorship in this book, and some characters I think could qualify for that role, but I think more than anything, it's the loss of her memories because it gives her that ability to lose that trauma that's held her back for so many years, that's kind of made her close in on herself, and she
Mm-hmm.
becomes a whole new character.
Mm-hmm.
And even Trey acknowledges this too, is like, it's so much easier for us to like talk and have this relationship because she's not held back. And you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So she's
Yeah, no, I
able
like that.
to journey out there, I think, with the help of this loss of the past that once crippled her.
Okay. That's interesting. I like that. Next step, crossing the first threshold. So this is the first time that the character is now leaving ordinary territory, moving into, okay, what's the next steps? So she we started with Mabel in the beginning of the book. She's got, poor girl, no friends, traumatic past, this closet crush. She trips and falls into his arms. He starts his own journey of, realizing, oh, maybe there's a spark there, and they're starting to explore that spark. What is the moment where she finally, gets on the bandwagon and says, okay, let's go on this explorative journey together? Like, is it worth leaving my comfort zone of being alone and letting someone in? What's that step? What does she do then?
I feel like we kind of get like a hint that she's going to do that before the accident and she loses her memories and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There's like a moment where her and Trey share a moment, and she is like, you know what, I want to change, and I wanted to instill that desire in her to enter into the special world before the loss of her memories, to kind of help in the end when she did get her memories back. Because yes, there's a moment where she enters the special world. Yeah. There is a moment where she enters the special world, I feel like, but I don't know if she would have been able to stick with it. That's my thing, and I want to leave that question there. And that's why I feel like the memory loss was the moment where she, like, it's that supernatural aid or whatever.
Yeah, no, I like that.
So when she's like, you see her just easily falling into things. She's funny, she's spunky. I feel like she woke up ready to go into this special world. It wasn't really a choice. She just was ready to get back into it.
But I really like, yeah, no, absolutely. And I really like how you just said that the reader needed a glimpse of that desire to change while prior to the supernatural aid and the magical loss of her memories, even though this isn't a magic story. Because I think you're right. Without that glimpse, it almost, like, the book I don't think would have succeeded in terms of that B story of like that transformation being believable, because it would have been kind of done for her again. So even though this is a character driven story, you know, your characters have to drive your plot, and the plot is her losing her memories and going on this journey with Trey. But the character has to drive the plot. The character has to have, choices, and they have to make them and live with them. And by showing her in the beginning, prior to the memory loss, being interested and wanting to tiptoe that line, it makes it way more believable, I think, when, she actually gets that push that, okay, the plot just didn't do this for her. There was a piece of her inner character that wanted this anyway. So, anyway, again, very well done.
Thank you.
So, the final step of the Act 1 departure is called the belly of the whale. Now, we don't have whales in this story. Again, it's a little metaphorical. But the belly of the whale is that moment. So they've got their mentor. They've got their supernatural aid. They've got this spark of, I see the adventure. I kind of want it now after I said maybe no. They're tiptoeing that line. There is a beat that has to be hit where they realize, I can't go back to what my life was before. I have tasted what this journey could be. I have to keep pushing ahead. And that's usually a dark moment in your story. And I mean, what chapter is it? Is it 12?
12.
I mean, it's gut wrenching, y'all. Like, ugh. Sucker punch. You can't go lower than what happens to her. She, again, spoilers, loses her mother, loses her brother, who are the people that were closest to her, and loses her memories. She loses essentially everything besides her journal and Trey. And so the bulk of the story, the meat and potatoes of the story, as we step into Act 2, is her learning to move past that. So, belly of the whale. You hit that point. You made a lot of us cry.
it's like for both of them is like you see Trey and I think that's a moment where Trey is like entering his new world as he finds the
Mm-hmm.
journal. Like it's like
Yes.
he's at his lowest point kind of thing, and
Mm-hmm.
he finds the journal, and it's like a whole new thing for him. But yeah, I don't think she ever really got to see the belly of the whale because she was so la di da di da. I
No, but
don't
we
know those
did.
people who
We were in the
died.
belly of the whale.
Yes.
Us readers experienced our own deepest darkest cry fest. But that
No,
honestly,
literally.
okay, that is a good point. That is interesting. So plot point was hit, but as you just said, she didn't necessarily feel that because she didn't remember them. We feel it as readers because we saw a very good glimpse in Act One of how important these people were to her. But when she finally wakes up and doesn't remember them, yeah, we're starting over again. So I think to your point, having Trey be an anchor in that shift from Act One to Act Two, because he is someone that was there for Act One and Act Two, and he does remember how important Liam was to him, was his brother, how important his mom ends up coming back and playing a pretty big role. Her mom ends up coming back to play a pretty
No,
big
you're
role
good.
for Trey's family. So I do think you still hit the character feel point for that plot point as well because you incorporated Trey in that as well. So again, snaps. All right, Act Two. We are in the special world. Yay! We made it. So the Road of Trials is the next plot point, but this is the bulk of the story. So like when you read the back of the book jacket, and you are promised what this book is going to be about, and you're trying to like summarize when you pick up a book off the shelf, this is what you're reading for. I'll keep coming back to Harry Potter. Harry Potter is a boy who discovers he's a wizard and goes to a wizarding school. The Road of Trials is him being in Hogwarts. So the Road of Trials is again that meat and potatoes of the book. So there's a lot. It's a long book. There's a lot of journey of her discovering her own strength again, and finally make the choice to go to college. We don't have to outline exactly all of those plot points that I would say fall under this one beat for the Road of Trials. But this is the bulk of the story. And this is, I would say, more a story, more plot things that are happening. They're there to test your heroes. Oh God, what's the word? Like I want to say courageousness, but it's not that. Like resilience, stamina. Yes, like the Road of Trials is going to be throwing a lot of things their way. And do they have the strength to keep going along this journey? Again, traditionally in mythology, this would happen in like things happen in threes in myths, and all good things in life. So like three trials, three roadblocks or whatever on whatever journey your hero is on, but doesn't have to be confined to that number. Next point. All right, meeting with the goddess. Again, doesn't have to be a real goddess. But this beat is definitely, it could be a character, it could be a place, it could be just a scene, a moment of reprieve after the bulk of our trials, something that gives your hero a little bit of peace, safety, comfort, something that they didn't have before. This is designed to be a beat of, again, a little bit of rest. And we had our mentor that served for our supernatural aid. This could be a similar recurrence of that character. This could be a new character, but something again to know that the hero is not alone in this journey at this point. Did you happen to hit this point with Maybelle and Trey?
I think I did.
Yahoo! All right.
I think Chelsea Turner, Trey's mom, she serves as like this healing nurturer, this step-in mom, for Maybelle, and it's just like I feel like she really plays that part because there's this constant worry for Maybelle that she's going to ruin everything, that she doesn't have a place where she belongs now that she's like a stranger in her own body. And Chelsea is there when she's going through everything and trying to get to the place that she wants to. And she just is like, you will always belong. Like, you are here with us kind of thing. And so I think she plays that role to a T.
I 110% agree. And it is interesting because I do think she had, and we don't have to get too much into this because I
Go
don't
right
even
ahead.
know my own like formative thought about this, but I do want to acknowledge she had this figure in her own mom. She had a great relationship with her own mom, and
Yeah.
then obviously she was lost. So in a way, like the recurrence of that motherly figure, again served as that beating of with the goddess. But it's, to the point of, something she didn't have before, she did, but it was, tragically lost. And I think
Hmm.
that support system is a good theme of the book too. Realizing you're not alone, realizing you can let people in, and build your own community around you. I love Chelsea. She was one of my favorite characters. She's so good.
No, yeah, I love her. I think
She's so
honestly,
pure.
like all the side characters could probably play the goddess role, but I think she really sticks out as that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know if that makes any sense, but they're all just
Mm-hmm.
like, "Oh yeah, we love you." Like Williams even has a talk with her multiple times, like, "You
Mm-hmm.
belong, we love you." Penny, but Chelsea really sticks out in my mind as that role for sure.
Yeah, I love her. Next step, woman as temptress. Um, doesn't have to be a real woman. Doesn't have to be a person. Just something. It could be a metaphor. Something that is purposely put in our hero's way to try to tempt them away from the journey that they're destined to be on. A lot of times in contemporary fiction, woman as temptress is an actual woman who tempts our hero. Um, and I can think off the top of my head, too, for Trey specifically, he's got this epic love story going on with Maybelle, then he's got this other girl that's like all over him that Maybelle unfortunately sees, and there's, we have our cute little miscommunication trope for a hot sec of what happened there. So that to me fits Trey's beat to a T. And that might just, be what hits the point for the whole story, but do you have something in your head that would have hit Maybelle's point too? Something that like threatened to take her away from the journey of letting people in and, going along with Trey's romance?
Hmm. I actually don't know. I
I
I feel
stumped you.
like it never once. What?
I stumped you.
No, no, no. Yeah, for real. I think that I missed this one. No, I feel like for Trey, he never was tempted. It just
Mm-hmm.
he was like, this is annoying because I know what I want, and this person is making this not look good on me.
What was her
But I
name?
think
What was her
from
name? I can't remember her name.
Juliet.
That's how much I hated her. I didn't remember her name. I'm like, go away.
No, it's she's literally like a gnat that everybody's just like, we know how everybody feels. Go away. Um,
But you need that
but
again. Like this, it was an important beat to hit. Like just, and
yes,
again, just to kind of whether Trey was potentially derailed or not on his quest, his journey. It was enough of a visual distraction to be like, do we really want to keep continuing down this track? Is it really worth it? And then they ended up playing a cute little May and Trey ended up playing a cute little cat and mouse game after that.
yeah,
But no, at the end they were still, hard fast for each other.
yes. I think it was like to show off like Maybelle, even though she didn't have her memories anymore, she
Mm-hmm.
still innately struggled with this idea of being vulnerable to people. So it was
Mm-hmm.
like to show like despite the memory loss, there is still that thing, and to see
Yeah.
that bimbo come in and kind of
Yep.
derail things, it was like I don't think I can be vulnerable. So yeah, I think it
Yeah.
hit that point for her for sure.
Perfect. All right. We are getting close to your first diagram we talked about. Our climbing
Mhm.
hill story. We're nearing the climax. We're nearing the top of the mountain. The next
Yes.
step, right before we get to the climax of the story, is called atonement with the father, or it can be called the abyss. Um, doesn't have to be a father. Doesn't have to be a dark black hole. But something that can metaphorically uh, be a visual symbol for the power that is held over the hero from the previous life. They're going through these steps, they're going through the road of trials, they're going on this journey, they're in the special world, they're very, very immersed in this journey, but there's something still holding them back. Something that whether a trauma, whether a memory experience, there is something still holding them to their ordinary life, and they can't officially shed their skin and become the brand new version of themselves until they atone with the father, or they mend the relationship with, you know, what they drug with them in their suitcase. Um, I think this was very interesting because her literal trauma she brought with her on this journey, even though she had no additional memory, was her father. So who is her father? Just fill in our the listeners.
So that trauma that we hinted at from the beginning that she's been trying to cope with for years was a abusive boyfriend of her mother. Wait,
Yeah, not
her
hers.
mom's abusive. So it's this man who should have been a father figure for her, did not play the role well, ended up leaving a few metaphorical and literal scars on her, and with this memory loss, she doesn't remember who he is, but we see like hints throughout the story of there's something lurking behind there,
Yeah.
until he shows up and confronts her, and this confrontation triggers everything. She's faced with all her deepest, darkest fears. She's faced with all her memories, and is literally just facing down that abyss and the literal father.
Yeah, wild. And so these steps kind of can come a little bit in tandem with each other. They did for your book. So there's the huge climax of the book, which I don't really want to spoil, but that is kind of the whole point of this pod. Where she has to make a giant choice. Again, character drives plot. The way that they do that is they're presented with choices, and they have to actively make them. The plot can't, you know, just happen to your character, and your character's just along for the ride. That there's going to be no B story if that's the case. So, again, a character-driven story where there's not, we're not going on epic quests. Mabel makes a choice when she finally recognizes her father figure. She makes a choice to confront him in a way where she takes back some power and, displays a huge amount of strength where previous Mabel never would have been able to had she not gone on this journey. So the climax of the story, that beat point, is called apotheosis, where your hero is elevated to a divine status. Again, very, very cool. That I think of divine like something like beyond life, beyond death. She literally almost dies in this scene and then comes back, which is you not knowing what this hero's journey steps were. You're still echoing all the feel points for it. Excellent work.
What can I
and then
say?
the third kind of point, yeah, right. The third kind of point of, so we have atone with the father, which means you're facing down your trauma, or whatever you brought with you on your journey. The highest point of the story where you're making your biggest choices or biggest things are happening. And then the last step of this little trifecta is the ultimate boon. Your boon is not Benson Boone. You're not doing backflips on your stage. It is your prize that you bring back as a result of your journey. Again, in mythologic terms, you know, a lot of times our heroes were going on epic quests to bring something back to their normal world. What would be Mabel's prize that she would have brought back with her after going on this transformative journey?
I think not only her, like, she got her memories back, but it's this new character growth coinciding of the loss of memories and what she gained from all of that to the retrieval of her memories. And she's like, you can tell this whole new, like, very much mixed between of the two characters we got to see throughout the book. So it's like this whole new look on life.
I like that. So she definitely changed as a result of her journey.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. All right. Act 3. We're in the home stretch. We've crested our original mountain. We climbed our mountain. We're at the climax. Now we're going to go back down, falling action and resolution. So Act 3 is, the umbrella term is the return. Okay, so we started in our ordinary world. We went on our special world. Time to go back home. And this is the step, I think, a lot of, again, the whole point of, putting together this little platform, teaching you guys the architecture behind stories. This is a step where I think is very intimidating to a lot of writers. They know where they want to start. They know the journey and the fun stuff that wants to happen, but they don't necessarily have a clear roadmap on how to wrap it all up. And again, I'm chuckling that we talked about the original like elementary school, how we learned how to tell a story. That is it's a bumpy line, but it's one line. Okay, the hero's journey is taking that idea and connecting it on a circle, which really completes that B story for me, where it's the why. Why did I go on, all of these plot points? If I'm not going to bring back what I've learned or apply that to what was my normal life, that's probably going to look a little different now as a result of going on this journey. So you actually have a lot of flexibility with how you want to wrap up your story, but it is important that for Act 3 you are returning in some way. So the first 3 points, you can use all of these, you can use a combination of them, whatever best fits your story, but we could just run through them. So the first point for the return, in a parallel to the beginning where your hero might have refused the call to adventure, they can also refuse the return. They might be, cautious to leave what they've now learned to love. They might be resentful of wanting to leave that and go back to how things were, because if how things were forced to change, how things were probably weren't all that great. There's going to be, some sort of element of them being like, do I really want to go back to what I was doing earlier? And then the next option that you could use is the magic flight. Again, contemporary romances, we're not actually flying by pure magic. But this could be like in a final conflict, a chase, a battle, something that is forcing your hero to realize, okay, even if I didn't really want to stay in Special World, I can't. There's something dangerous. I have to go. And then that can sometimes lead to your other optional stage, Rescue from Without. If your supernatural aid that started the journey with your hero at the beginning, this is a good chance to kind of tie things full circle. That can kind of come back in a way. That is an option that you can use. But some sort of outside force that like forces your hero to be like, no, you got to exit. You're done. You had your fun. So if any of those three kind of triggers, to use one of your words earlier, what fits the best for, or did any of these happen naturally in Dear Future Husband?
Um,
And they're all optional, so if it didn't like fit like totally perfect, then
no,
I'm not gonna call you a
you're
failure.
good. I think, hmm, I think, because you and we kind of talked over this, but I think the rescue from without with the supernatural aid that helped Hero through the book can circle back, and it's kind of comes back to her mom had said some words. She was acting as like a help in that beginning of the book, but she does have a moment, and it's like very vague, but she has a moment you can tell with those who are beyond the grave, and it kind of boosts her forward, and she realizes like she can fight for herself and she'll be okay. So I think definitely that helps.
I love books that like kind of come full circle. And yeah, we just talked about that, we are physically charting out a circle, but even just like little nods and hints, like if it's a phrase that, and there is a word for it that I'm not going to come up with off the top of my head. But like you intentionally put in a phrase that repeats itself through an episode, a story, a book. I love when things circle back and you're like, oh, that made sense in the beginning, but it carries so much more weight now as a result of that journey.
Yes.
I think you had a little bit of Magic Flight because again, without giving too much away, like there is like a rush, like that um climax apotheosis point. It's heightened tension. It's very elevated, but there is like a literal rush that you wrote in that scene where she is being rushed somewhere.
It's a good point. No, you can you just
She's in an ambulance, guys. I'll just tell you. We got sirens. We got things going. And that could be, I think, considered in this point as well, because you get that rush of I have to leave. I went through this huge explosion of a climax.
I also think that could work for Trey's point of view.
Yes.
Because he's in that ambulance with her, and he's like going through his own kind of like, I feel like he's hitting that climax, but he's also being rushed to a point.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I like it. So we have, whatever, this is the refusal of return, the magic flight, and the rescue from without. All of them, some of them, none of them, but they are the trigger that actually takes your hero physically back to the next point where you cross the return threshold. You have to come full circle. again, how did Maybelle cross her return threshold? Where did she go? What did she do?
She went to her literal home.
Yes, she did. The beginning of the book was she never wanted to leave her home. She's very content being alone. She goes on this transformative journey, and what does she do when she finally gets her memories back, atones with the father, comes to terms with, she remembers the loss of her family, and she goes home to reconcile at that point.
Yes.
Next step is the Master of Two Worlds, where you, as a reader, can see that your hero is now comfortable being back within their normal sphere, and they had basically mastered all the trials, everything that they had to go through in the special world as well. They are taking everything that has changed within them from their journey, and now they can apply it to their previous life. I guess probably the easiest way is just walk us through the ending of the points that Maybelle goes through and Trey to wrap up the end of the story, and like what as a result of her, going to college, entering the romance with Trey, coming back to her family home. How are we closing up this book, essentially?
Well, we get to see that she's very content with not only being home, because she stays home with Trey and they're together, and she goes to she goes like to visit her family, and she knows like she's not alone, when before it was very much felt like she was alone in her grief and stuff, but now she's like she feels very connected with them, which is a very strange way to bring two people together is by killing off other people, but whatever. So
it's trauma bonding.
So we could see. No, exactly. We see that she is like very reconciled with not only this part of her life and seeing her family, but we do get glimpses of her talking about being back in this world that she had departed into. She goes and she's part of that too. So it's like a combination of both her worlds.
Nice.
Right?
Yeah, literally. So the final beat point in the hero's journey, it's called The Freedom to Live. In other formats that we'll probably explore in later episodes, this is just your closing image, and a lot of times it's, again, a nice touch to kind of mirror what your opening image was. So wherever she was for her call to adventure, going on a journey, coming back, that is a stylistic choice. Some authors they physically put them in the same place they started. You don't necessarily have to do that, because I think a very interesting point that you did here, the very ending, when she is reconciling the loss of her mom and her brother, she's at the graveyard, which could be, it's a symbol of death. Like, you're looking at their tombstone, it's a symbol of the end. But for her, finally having the restoral of all of her memories and the journey of she's now a stronger individual because she let go of some of that trauma, that image really does become one of, she's reconciled the loss, but she is allowing herself to move on, and that freedom to live. And my favorite, final point is, one of your taglines that you use for promoting this book is, live like Maybelle Mason. Take this journey and live like her. And that's the final step of the hero's journey.
Yes. Which I think there was a point where, in the very first chapter, she has this dream where she's on a beach making a choice of whether or not to live. It's very metaphorical. To live or to not. And then in the very last chapter, it's a very physical, real point where it's to live or to not. You get what I'm saying? And she chooses, it's an easy choice at that point, but she chooses to live. She runs to the left and chooses Trey.
It's so good. Okay, cool. So yeah, big takeaway from all of that is, again, not knowing, you didn't outline this book based on the hero's journey, but it was very present within your story, which I think is so cool. So it should come as a little bit of an affirmation to writers out there who are overwhelmed by the idea of, I have this idea, I have this plot, I have this scene, I have this character, but how do I string it together in a novel structure? This exists, you can study it, you can apply it, but it's also just naturally around us. Like, and you're gonna pay attention now. Now that if you listen to this episode and now that you know what it is, it's gonna ruin you actually for reading books and watching movies, because you're gonna be like subconsciously thinking, I know what steps they're going on. And so from there, I think there's only other like, I think that the big question. Okay, now you know the structure. Now you know where your character has to go. I think the hardest part once you understand that is figure out where to start. Because yes, you want that initial snapshot, and you and I talked about this too the first time I read the first draft of Dear Future Husband. Like, I nicely asked you, can we start it a little bit closer? Because I felt like the bulk of the story started a little bit later than where you allowed the reader to enter her life. So that would be, I think, my only caution is don't leave so much information in the beginning. You want to start this hero's journey process as close to the actual call as possible, and then tease the reader information, backstory, flashbacks, an actual scene should you need them. But your readers are smarter than you think. I think that's a good rule of thumb to remember. They can usually catch on to things, but if it's too drawn out in the beginning, they'll have a hard time getting into the story. So with the hero's journey, jump right in. Don't be afraid of that.
Love.
We did it. We started that whole book.
Yeah, that was crazy.
That was so much fun, though.
I didn't even outline that book. What'd you say?
I said that was so much fun. Thank you.
No, it was fantastic. Meg, you're so incredible, and truly, okay, I'll say that, wow.
Words.
Okay. In my intro, I do say, like, you're my editor, but, like, you've taught me so much regarding, like, the story and structure. You are intelligent, and it's been such a privilege to learn from you.
I'm just nerdy.
I get to learn
really
from
nerdy.
you. Stop. I love it. I get to learn from you so much, and so it's been such a honor, and to see you now, like, doing this to provide this information to others. I'm, like, so excited for all the wannabe authors listening, and anyone who wants to up their game in the storytelling universe. Like, I know you're just going to be a huge, like, phenomenal help, so I'm super excited to see you get out there and start creating this stuff. I'm gonna be like taking all the notes. So thank you for joining me today.
Too. Like, I think you do a really good job of this, pulling in other authors and editors and agents, and, like, you know, your platform that you've created was to help kind of teach you and teach others too. Like, I want to be able to, you know, talk to other writers as well. And there's so many. This isn't the only structure that you can use. And again, once you know the rules, you can break them to a certain extent. So I'm really excited to get into maybe other structures that work for different stories, and then really unique structures that play with this idea of, you know, there's one, again, F word formula, but there doesn't have to be. This is just a really good, I would say, starting point to kind of get your feet wet and understand your own voice for how you want to tell your stories.
No, it's perfect. I'm so excited.
Thanks, friend. Okay, this is so much fun.
Oh, it was perfect. It was so much fun. I'll link everything below, but I'm going to go ahead and close out with the listeners. You and I can keep chatting it up off screen, but thanks y'all for listening. You can find Meg tagged in the show notes and below the video, and we will see y'all next Thursday. Bye. To let everybody know, which I kind of actually, I'm going to take that out. I'm like, wait, okay, no, I did an intro video.
Is that beeping me? Can you hear that? Something's beeping.
What?
I think something's beeping. Do you hear any beeps? It might be me.
I don't hear any beeps.
Okay, we'll cut that later.
Okay.
I think my headphones just died. Can you hear me? Is that what happened?
Oh, I can't tell.
Oh, they did die.
Oh, now I can.
What happened.
That is what happened.
What do we do now?